crafters, Lenny Cosplay here. Welcome to a brand new episode of Lenny Cosplay and Crafts. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to give me a thumbs up, comment about this video, and please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Your support is always greatly appreciated. Today, I'm going to show you how to make your very own baby blanket. You're going to save time and money. So, your friend just had a baby, your coworker just had a baby, whomever, you're invited to the baby shower, and now you're frantically, panically shopping throughout the store or a website, trying to figure out what the heck to get as a baby shower gift. So you ponder and you come across baby blankets, but guess what? The baby blanket breaks the budget. So we're gonna make our own. What you can use as far as material, you can use minky fabric, like so. You can also use fleece, or you can use cotton flannel. I highly recommend that you do go to a fabric store to look at the wide variety selection of materials and all of the beautiful colors of fabric that they have. Also, be sure to get those deals and use whatever coupons you can find. You'll save a lot of money when you're buying your materials. Next, you're going to use some satin. I have a white double wide satin. I bought a whole roll of this. We're going to use this to trim around the edges here. Circling back to the fabric really quick, you're going to want to purchase about a yard of the fabric, whether you choose minky, fleece, or the cotton flannel. I'm going to measure it out to be approximately 30 by 36 inches to kind of be an average size of the receiving blanket. So definitely request at least 1 yard of your material. You're also going to need your all-purpose thread. Try to use an all-purpose thread that is quite durable and also the color that matches your satin, because it will be shown through the satin. If you get a matching color, you're not going to see it as much. Just to be safe, always have your handy dandy measuring tape. You will need your trusty iron as well, and your cutting tool options. You can choose between a rotary tool or your fabric scissors, whichever one is easier for you to use, whatever you have at your leisure. I always aim for the rotary tool to just have a more smoother, very defined and even cut. Lastly, you're going to need your pins and your clips. You're going to use your push pins here to actually hold down the blanket fabric itself once you start sewing it together. When you're going to add the satin trim to the blanket, you're going to need to clip that down. I would highly recommend that you use either fabric clips that you can find at your, handy dandy sewing store, or you use brand new hair clips, just like these. Very simple, easy to use. The reason why we're using those today for the satin is so that you don't make holes through the satin itself with the pins. It's that simple. So let's go ahead and get started on our easy DIY baby blanket. Here we are. We're just going to start pinning around the edges of our baby blanket. You want to do this to the whole entire baby blanket. And I would at least pin out about a ½ inch around all of the edges of the baby blanket. And it's perfectly fine to keep your fabric with the pretty side out. All we're going to do here is just pin around about a ½ inch in on top of this fabric to sew it close together. Don't worry about the exposed edges, because we're going to cover that up with that beautiful satin trim. Once you've completed these steps, we're going to move on to sewing the edge. Moving on to the next step, now that we have it completely pinned around the perimeter of the fabric, depending on what you use, we're going to go ahead and use a simple base stitch all across the perimeter about a ½ inch. Now remember, if you are using any different fabric such as a fleece or a cotton flannel, make sure that you already have that fabric pre-washed so it avoids any shrinkage when they wash the blanket. So let's go ahead and start stitching away at the perimeter. Now that we've completed sewing the perimeter of the actual fabric of the blanket, we're going to start working on that satin binding. So what you want to do is get your satin fabric. You want to begin to heat up your iron. Make sure that it's set to the lowest heat so that you do not burn or damage the satin. You're going to just fold down the middle here like so, to create an arrowhead point with the satin bind. With the lowest heating setting already prepped for you, you're just going to go ahead and iron that part down. You want to press down firmly to make sure that it stays. You might need to let your iron rest on it for just a little bit if you were still heating up the iron to the lowest heat setting. You want to make sure that the arrowhead is leveled and even. Once you've completed the iron fold onto the satin, you're going to remove it from the iron and we're going to lay it to measure in the middle part of the blanket like so. You want to start with the middle of the longest side of your blanket. As we begin to measure the satin binding onto the actual fabric of the blanket, you want to begin in that middle side, the middle part of the longest side of the blanket. So let's say about here should be good. Make sure that that middle opening point is your guideline and you fold it over like so. Perfect, just like that. For extra guidance, you can actually fold your satin completely in half and iron over it to create that middle guideline for yourself, if needed, of course. Make sure the crease is directly intact with that fabric itself. And now it's time to use these trusty hair clips or your sewing clips, whichever you prefer. Just do not use pins. No, no, no. Now these hair clips are a bit big, so I'm gonna have to remeasure that and bring them down just a tad bit. Here is a good level, like that. Perfect. Now, you're going to continue doing that until we get to the corners. Now that we've successfully used the hair clips to set the satin binding onto the fabric itself, we're going to go ahead and just sew right on the edge of the satin binding onto the fabric. Make sure that you use a matching all-purpose thread that matches the same color as the satin binding. I'm going to go ahead and use a crisscross or a zigzag stitch right onto the very edge of the satin binding onto the fabric. I'm going to stop once we get to the very end or a corner side of this blanket. Then I'll show you how we're going to do that fold over part. Here we go. We finished sewing on the satin binding onto the fabric, so it should be attached like so. Now that we stopped at the corner, we're going to go ahead and continue this process, but we want to make sure that we're following the same process as we did before with applying the binding to the actual fabric. So we're going to create a little corner-like pocket here. Measure out the binding to about the halfway mark, and you should create an angle like so. Next, you're going to fold up and over to where it's hugging the fabric again. You can go ahead and even that out to make sure that it creates a perfect point and arrow. And very important, you want to flip over the back side as well to make sure that it is going to be leveled out. Also, to help yourself out, it's great to just double check here for measurements too, to make sure that you did get as close to the middle to the satin binding as possible. And then you're going to continue clipping on away until you meet the next end piece or corner piece of the fabric. And then we continue this process all over again. Ta-da! Hooray, crafters! Alrighty, now that you have successfully sewn the satin binding all across the perimeter of the lovely fabric you have officially created your very own baby blanket. Now just be super careful when you are making your own baby blanket. The satin is super slippery, so be sure to use plenty of clips. Make sure that both sides of the satin binding is evenly attached with the clip onto the actual blanket fabric so it doesn't slip out as you're sewing and that you're not missing any threads on the opposite side of the blanket. And that finishing piece, since we did start from the middle of this blanket, I'm going to show you here. There's a couple of ways to go about it. I did a little something different. So that end piece there, it was originally cut on an angle. You could have cut the ribbon on an angle to match that, so it's a perfect fitting puzzle piece there, and you just sew right across it. Or you can go ahead and overlap that piece with the satin ribbon that you were continuing to sew along the edge there. And what I did, very, very carefully, I do not recommend this to everyone, but since I was kind of in a rush and in a pinch, I used a lighter. And I used a lighter to go gently over the edges here to seal up the thread. Because satin ribbon is made of synthetic fibers, it's not cotton. What actually happens, the fibers begin to melt into like a plasticky like formation. So I just did a very quick light seal on here, so it's not going to be super tough or hard, where it's not like spiking out, so it doesn't hurt anyone. And just be careful not to burn the edges. or you can simply just sew down the middle to attach both parts of that satin ribbon binding to the blanket. So whichever way you prefer, you may do so. Just make sure that the satin binding does not fall apart from your blankie. So here is the finished product, everyone. I am so excited to share that with y'all. Definitely had lots of fun making this. This was super easy, and it makes the perfect gift for any lovely newborn baby. You can do so many designs and patterns with these. If you wanted to make the blanket like reversible or something with other patterns, you can totally do one side with one design, the other side with an opposite design, so it's kind of giving you like that reverse effect, or like a two-in-one style blanket. I mean, you can do so much with making and creating all different types of different style blankets, and you can make them any size you want. You can add any trim or binding that you want. I mean, have fun with it, get funky, and add like pom-pom trims if you want to, or something of that sort. But this is your very first baby blanket that you have all created by using my sewing tutorial. Thank you all so much for tuning in on another episode of Lenny Cosplay and Crafts. It means a lot to me that you guys enjoy my videos and that you're tuning in. Please give me some thumbs up and comments to show your support in the link below. And most of all, please subscribe to my channel and set your notifications so you can get alerts when I have new videos being posted up for you here on YouTube. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. I'm Lenny, and you have all been amazing. Stay crafty, crafters. Until next time.